Thank you. Thank you, Angelica, for the great presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Loud and clear. So in this talk, I'm going to give you my experience for personal and professional projects alongside automation via NodeJS and Puppeteer in more specific. So the agenda for today is a rapid overview of the stack. Then let's see how is the use case, the most common scenario. Then dive into the real usage that I made up in these years. And then let's have a conclusion and takeaways. So first of all, who am I? I'm Miki. I'm from Florence, as Angelica said. I'm a full stack engineer in Growens, and I'm also co-founder of the Schrödinger Hat, that is an open source organization, an Italian open source organization, and we are developing open source software, especially in Python and JavaScript stack. You can find me anywhere on the web. Just go on my website, that is my name and my last name, so it's pretty easy. And what is Schrödinger Hat? It's a podcast organization. And in Italy, we also organize some events, in person and hybrid. So I would like to thank all the organization, all the NETWAYS people to organize this conference in a very bad time for COVID and the pandemic. So let's start with an overview of the stack. First of all, what is Puppeteer? Puppeteer is a node library which provides a high-level API to control Chrome or Chromium instance. By default, it's headless. That means that you don't see anything that is moving on your screen. But basically, you have full access to your Chrome or Chromium instance. Also, you have also access, because it's a beta feature, to Firefox, but we are not talking about that. So to me, it's kind of a magic, because of course, you are controlling your Chromium instance without touching anything. Puppeteer, in a schematic way, is like this. You have an instance of Puppeteer library in your JavaScript file, and basically you have access via the DevTool protocols. That is a high-level API that I said to you before. And you have access to all the classes that you have in your browser. So you have the browser classes, the browser context, and all the DOMs, so all the elements inside your page, the frame, the workers, all of them. So basically, you have full access, full control of your Chromium instance, of your browser. So let's dive a little bit into it with a history. It's not a history class, but something like that. So first of all, the first software that made this possible, so it made possible to control a browser via code, was Selenium. And how many of you know Selenium? OK, that's pretty famous. Also because it's the oldest one. The SDK is written in Java, but also there is a wrapper for JavaScript, for Node, for Python, and so on. So it was the leading software for this kind of job. And also the ecosystem that is behind is really powerful, especially in Java. After a while, let's say in 2015, it comes Phantom.js. That was the first JavaScript headless library to control the browser. And this library opened up, let's say, a new vision on how to achieve testing and automation over your browser. After Phantom.js, a lot of libraries start to be around, especially on GitHub, because everything is open source, like Puppeteer, that is created by Google, maintained by Google, but of course, it's open sourced. It's kind of a new sheriff, because if we compare the GitHub stars as a measure, we can say that Puppeteer now is more popular than Selenium. It's not right to say that, because of course, there are a lot of code base. There are still running Selenium. and some new one that maybe run Puppeteer compared to Selenium. So how is it working? There is a snippet on the right. It's really basic. Just import your node module that is required Puppeteer, and then you can start in a sync function the instance, so Puppeteer launch, and you can open up a new page over your browser without touching your browser. And of course, you can navigate, in this case, over your favorite Google page. And then, of course, you can do whatever you want, or all the actions that you want, like simulate the user navigation, and then close your browser. So it's pretty easy to read it. It's pretty easy to write, but you need to be very careful to write it, because it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's easy all the way around in your application, in your test. It just means that it's more easier to write back code, because it's ready readable, but it's going to be hard to maintain. So what you can do with Puppeteer and Node.js? Everything, literally everything. So let's just give you some points. We can crawl a page or a website. Of course, you need to be very ethical on this. So with permission and with your application, and you can crawl any kind of application, single page app, server-side rendering, or whatsoever. Of course, you can test your environment. So you can choose Puppeteer over Cypress or other testing library. And you can do end-to-end testing and integration testing. Of course, the most easy scenario is to generate a PDF or a screenshot from your pages and from your applications to do maybe a visual regression testing. And of course, you can do any kind of automation. Otherwise, this talk won't be here. And by using Chrome, you can have the latest web standards made by Google from the web.dev website. So you can have the performance test, the lighthouse test, and you can generate the code coverage from your application via the profiler feature that is in your DevTools from Chromium. So are there any valid alternatives to Puppeteer? Because I show you Puppeteer that is a node library, but I say also that from Phantom.js, a lot of libraries came up. So I will just give you one name that is Tenet, but it's not, and it's Playwright. Playwright is Microsoft, so Google against Microsoft again. And there is a funny story behind this, because people that were working with Google on the Puppeteer project, around 2020, they change hat and they go for working in Microsoft to build up the Playwright library. Playwright is a little bit more efficient because you can use not just only Chromium or Chrome instance, but you can use also Firefox, Edge, WebKit browser, and so on. So you have more browser compatibility. And for test purpose, it's really nice. And I suggest you to go to their GitHub page, because of course Playwright is also open source. And just to compare the API, because you can see clearly that they are pretty similar because they are written by the same person. That's really nice, funny story. So which one is better is the right answer to ask to ourselves. It depends. I mean, we are programmers. The right answer is it depends. All the time it depends. It depends what are your needs. So maybe if you already know Puppeteer, or if you already know other kind of library that is pretty similar to Puppeteer, maybe Puppeteer is the right choice. But if you wanted to try something else and you need to use the library for testing purpose mainly, maybe Playwright is the right decision because you can use more browser compatibility. So it depends. It's up on you. So let's see how we can use Puppeteer. Scraping. I say to you that we can use crawling for a website. We can also use scraping for a website because we can render a page. And of course, we need to be very ethical on this because we don't need to scrape all the website or just for personal use if you need to. But for testing purpose, it's really useful. Just a point, Code Sandbox is started to use Puppeteer for testing purpose because they were scraping their website, their application, just to find something that was wrong, some bugs, some feature that went wrong, and so on. So it's really useful. Of course, we can use for testing. As I say, there are a lot of plugins because it's a Node library, so you can install any NPM modules on it, and you can use for end-to-end testing, UI testing, integration testing, visual testing, any kind of testing. You can use Puppeteer because it can render your application, and you can have it in only one place. So it's really useful for automate everything. Just to give you an example, this is an example of a test written in Puppeteer. That is Alibaba website in this example. Yeah, because I do use a lot of AliExpress for my Raspberry Pi, so Alibaba was the main goal to do. And it's pretty easy. As I said to you, it's really readable, it's really easy to write, and the tests are really easy to reproduce and to write in a very beautiful tree, because it's really nice to see a lot of tests that is working alongside the browser. So it's pretty easy. Let's say that the first test is just setting the viewport for your browser, then go to the Alibaba website, waiting for the network to end up all the network requests, and then find that there is a search bar on the page. That's a pretty simple case scenario, but it's worked really fine, and also it's pretty simple to write a bunch of other tests. So there are also a lot of case scenarios that you can use these tools, NodeJS and Puppeteer, for utility. Let's say that you need to automate a workflow or a form of your application. Let's say that you need to take an input from a possible trigger, all the data that you need, and you can use this environment, so NodeJS and Puppeteer, to just retrieve the data and just apply onto the form or the workflow process. So it's pretty simple to use it because it's pretty simple to write and to maintain. So let's finally arrive to the real usage. So scraping. For scraping purpose, I write down a little scraper for Skyscanner. Back in 2018, I needed to go in Portugal because I need a vacation from work. Of course, the code is still available on my GitHub. There is the link. And the goals for the project were create a private API for personal use, of course. Create a cron script just to verify the flights that were applicable to me to take my flight and go to Portugal. And of course, you can use, I did also the CLI to check flights manually while I was working and with a boring environment. And finally get the cheapest flight to Porto, that is in Portugal. And so that was me, after everything was working fine. But of course, it took time to arrive to the right decision to how to create an API to work with the Skyscanner website and search for the right amount of days and flights and airport of arrival and departure. A lot of combination, but with Puppeteer, it's really easy to control this configuration, also because it's JavaScript and nothing else. Also to automate, it's really easy. I suggest you to go to the repository so you can have a look to the code and also to the container, Docker container, and you can run it on locally if you like. I don't have too much time to give you all the example of the application. So another real usage that I did was the process automation. With Schrödinger Hat, we had a podcast. And we were having trouble to publish this podcast that was a video podcast over Spotify and over other platforms. So we just decided to go for a gateway platform that is Anchor FM, that is from Spotify. And we decided to go with this platform because it's really easy to use. It's just one page, it's a single page application. And it permits us to just log in on Anchor FM, click 2 buttons, upload our file, and we are live in 10 platforms of podcasting. There was a problem, of course. There were no API. So we were manually uploading our file and uploading our description over the website. And of course, we are programmers, so we need to speed up a little bit the automation. So we decided to go with Github Actions and NodeJS environment. We decided to go with GitHub because we needed to go open source. We were talking in the podcast about open source and the latest technologies. Github Actions were go published around 2020, I remember, mid-2020, if I'm correct. And so we decided to build a pipeline over GitHub Action to convert the audio file from YouTube in a MP3 file that was accepted by Anchor FM, and then sign in on Anchor FM, write down the description, upload the file, and just click on the publish button to any kind of platform. And so that was really nice to see how everything builds up in a very easy way, because you can just go on your website, on your personal page over Anchor FM, just see how it's working, and then replicate everything via code. You can do manually, or you can ask to a friend that is a JavaScript lover to do it. So, and you can maintain just the pipeline and the DevOps part that is very fun to have. And then you are live for any kind of your episode over your podcast. And for an application that is Anchor FM, that is still not have any kind of APIs, it's really a good tool. And of course, it's open source, so a lot of people were embracing our tool over GitHub Actions and installing the GitHub Actions over their repositories, because they were finally automate everything. So the conclusions about this. My goal was to inspire you to automate a lot of process, not just pipelines, not just deploy, but in a more big picture, a lot of process should be automated. A form, or also the basic actions that takes time to a person should be automated to me. And of course, maybe the automation, it took more time to build instead of just do the things manually, but that's the way I'm thinking. And of course, in my opinion, in every application, we should have an end-to-end testing, UI testing, especially if it's a product or something that is involved with customers. So it's really, in a modern application, it's really useful to have visual regression or end-to-end testing just to verify if everything is going all right and without any kind of bugs or visual bugs or something like that. I find in Puppeteer a really good library for working with, especially in NodeJS environment. But I say to you, Puppeteer was just a choice that I made a couple of years ago, and after that, Playwright came in. So probably if I needed to replicate everything from now, so replicate the Skyscanner scraper and also the YouTube to Anchor Actions, probably I will go with Playwright because it took more easy steps to accomplish and more browser compatibility in the end. So, and all these Libraries are open source, so if you want to contribute, feel free to do it. And so, thanks.